Cats lose to Tennessee. You know that. It was brutal. Most points scored by any team in Rupp Arena since VMI scored, I think, 111 against Billy Gillespie. And the most points scored by an SEC opponent in Rupp Arena since 1993. Cats never led down the entire game. That really doesn't happen very much in Rupp Arena either, where Kentucky never leads in a game. It was a brutal loss. And look, there are a lot of ways to talk about this game. Let's just quickly talk about the actual game for a second. Kentucky was outplayed from the very first moment and got in a hole that they really never could get out of. Cut it to 4 a couple times, cut it to 1 at one point. But they came out not ready to play. They got down 16-5. And then they did the exact same thing in the second half. I mean, they cut it to 4 at halftime, and then within 3 or 4 minutes in the second half, it's 12. So in the first and second half, they just didn't come out ready to play, and you can't win like that. And what's amazing is Kentucky gave up 103 points to Tennessee, and their best player didn't even play very well. As a matter of fact, for long, extended periods of time in the clutch part of the game, like the 12-minute mark to the 5-minute mark, he was sitting on the bench. They had their best player and their potential SEC player of the year sitting on the bench because they didn't need him. The other guys were killing us. A couple stats that were amazing to me. Rob Dillingham and Reed Shepherd and Antonio Reeves combined to score 72 points. I was telling Billy, Reed Shepherd had 21 and shot 50% from the field. It felt like he played a lot worse than that. But they combined for 72 points. The rest of our team only scored 20. Our big guys, Mitchell, Bradshaw, and Ugo, combined to score 4 points. I mean, you're not going to win like that. So it was an absolute travesty of a game, in my opinion. Some of the worst defense, except for maybe an 8-minute stretch at the end of the first half. I think it's some of the worst defense I've ever seen a Kentucky team play. Just guys just completely driving past them. I mean, Tennessee doesn't even put up a lot of points this year. They put up more than they have in some other years, but they're still – and they just scored at will. And we made no adjustments. We gave up 10 points on out-of-bounds plays. And for, I think, the 6th time in the last 4 games, gave up a wide-open dunk or layup off an out-of-bounds play. The fact that that's not been corrected is ridiculous. But on a bigger picture, this is an awful loss and has been an extremely disappointing few weeks just in terms of the way this program has gone. I know DJ Wagner was out. I think he's really important, but we're 0-3 without him. Wilmington, Florida, and Tennessee have beaten us. We're 0-3 without Wagner, and if you combine their 3 rosters, they would have fewer NBA players than what we have on the court without Wagner. I mean, how is that acceptable? And it's just more of the same thing. And it's part of a trend that, if we are honest with ourselves, has been happening since the COVID year. 4 straight years of disappointing results and rationalization or accepting of whatever happens. It's really more the rationalization. We talk about these 4 years, and no matter what the individual thing is, we find a reason to excuse it. Well, it was the COVID year, as if the other teams in the country also weren't dealing with COVID. Well, you know, it's St. Peter's. Well, that was weird. It was Severe Wheeler was point guard. It was this. It was that. It's always something. Well, now it's Wagner's out. Well, then in the Kansas game, it was, well, we didn't have any bigs. Okay, well, in the South Carolina game, it was that Adu was out. I mean, whatever the game is, we find a way to excuse every single loss. But it did feel like tonight, just from the people that I talked to and looking on social media, that it felt different tonight. I had a friend at the game. I ended up deciding not to go. And I had a friend at the game say he couldn't remember the last time Rupp was angrier leaving. Now, I wasn't there, so I can't say that that's true or not. But this person's been to every game and says, I can't remember it being angrier than when people were leaving. And I got that sense tonight as well, that there is a point of this is just not acceptable to people anymore. Now, let me be clear. There's still 10 games left. And there's still a postseason, and there's still time to turn it around. And there have been Kentucky teams that have turned it around in similar instances, 2014 being the most obvious. And this team actually has the talent where it wouldn't be crazy, like that 2014 team, where it wouldn't be crazy if they did it. But I think we're setting up for a March where it's really Calipari's relationship at Kentucky comes down to March. And that stinks because he's had most of his time here has been a really, really good run. But the drop-off has been obvious and real in the last 4 years. And people who try to act like that's not the case are just fooling themselves. We've lost back-to-back home games 8 times in the history of Kentucky basketball. We've done it 3 times in the last 4 years. I mean, just think about that stat. Just think, it's unbelievable. And I have said, if you've listened to this show for 14 years, March is random. You can play really well and lose. You can be a really good team, go cold one night and lose. John Wall's team was awesome. They got cold one night, they lost, right? In 2017, Kentucky was the second best team in the country. They just happened to play the first best team in the Elite Eight. In 2015, we were the best team in the country by far, and we ran into the one team that could beat us, and they made a couple big plays and beat us at the end. Like, stuff happens. At the same time, in 2014, we're one missed shot away from losing in the second round, right? In 2011, if Brandon Knight doesn't hit a layup, we lose in the first round. So March is random. But over the culmination of a career, it becomes less random. A one-year individual sample can be random, or slice can be random, but the whole 14-year sample is not random. Calipari has put himself in a position with this fan base where even though March can be random, this year it better be random in a good way. I think if we don't have a good March, this fan base is kind of over it. I think that's just reality. Leave aside Matt Jones's personal opinion, because contrary to what you would think with what people say online, I tend to have, even today, remained more of a Calipari supporter, I think, than the average fan at this point. But none of it matters, because the fan base, I think, has reached a point that this March better go well. And every loss we take along the way is going to make it harder and harder for it to go well in March. We're now looking, if the tournament started tomorrow, we would be a 6, maybe a 7 seed. Because our resume is so bad. And we still have to go to Tennessee, go to Auburn, host Alabama, and go to Mississippi State and host Gonzaga. There are more losses to get on the resume. At this point, I think if we have the best possible finish we can have, we're probably going to end up a 4-3 at best, but probably a 4. So, you're going to have to upset some teams to make a March run. But I think this fan base has reached a point with Cal that this March better go well. And if it doesn't, Kentucky is never going to fire John Calipari. Whether you wanted that to happen or not, it won't. It just can't, and it won't. But it is going to become so tenuous, the relationship, I don't know how it could continue to go without it being miserable for everyone involved. And that culminated to me tonight. I texted Drew. I'm just going to be, listen, if you've listened to the show, you know I just tell you exactly what I feel and what I do and our lives. That's what this show is. So I texted Drew right after the game was over, and he was just telling me about some of the stuff in the crowd. And I said, he definitely does the post-game radio show tonight, right? And Drew was like, oh, for sure. He's not going to skip this one. And then he did. He, after a loss that probably left the Rupp Arena crowd, as at least according to my friend, as angry as they ever remember, did not even show up to talk to the fans on the radio. In front of Tom Leach, who is a friendly voice, who is going to say nothing but nice things to him. He didn't even do that. And he sent Orlando to do it. I think that's one of the lamest things I've ever seen from a coach that makes $10 million a year. That's one of the lamest things I have ever seen. You know, he skipped a bunch of them over the years, but sometimes it doesn't matter. He'll do road post-game radio shows where he talks for literally like for a minute combined, and they cut it into 3 segments. But on a night like tonight, you're paid to face the music. You ask your players all the time, this is Kentucky, I can't hide you. We all know that quote. This is Kentucky, I can't hide you. Well, then you sit there and don't hide. Okay? Justin Edwards, that kid has taken more criticism this year than any player on the team, and he has underperformed. But he has probably taken more criticism than anyone on the team. They sent him out there, and he had to do it. And you didn't. That's lame. People can get mad about me saying that, but that's the truth. That is lame to send that kid and make him do his responsibility for which he's making $0, at least officially from the school. And you don't do it, and you make $10 million. You want to know why the fan base is frustrated? The fan base is not frustrated because we don't have, we're too crazy, or we're basketball bennies, or we should sit there and cheer and not overanalyze. That's not why they're frustrated. They're frustrated because we are playing at a level that is not a Kentucky standard, and if we're honest with ourselves, we've been doing that for the last few years. And the relationship between fan and coach has been broken. And it's easy to blame that on other figures. It's easy to blame that on social media. It's easy to blame that on negativity or overanalyzing or Matt Jones and KSR. That's the easy way out. But you want to know why it's like that? Because when you take the loss against the rival that next to the one down the road is the one fans care about the most, the rival whose coach, when you've been ranked in the top 10, is 7-1 against you. Rick Barnes is 7-1 when Kentucky's ranked in the top 10. Against that rival, in an atmosphere that was as good pregame as you'll ever see at Rupp Arena, in a day that people were so excited about, even though you lost last week to Wednesday, in that day you took a loss where we never led, were embarrassed, and you didn't even come out and say anything when it was over. And Justin Edwards had to. That's why the relationship is broken. Results and a connection to the people that care about this program the most that has somehow lost its path. I hope it can still be repaired. I hope we go on a run in the next 10 games and in March that is special. I hope we look at this year like we did 2014. I hope it happens. But at this point, and it saddens me to say it, I think it has to happen. Because if it doesn't, I don't know how this keeps going. It's like a marriage where so much has happened, and everything everyone does gets everyone so annoyed. Cal's annoyed by us, myself, Matt Jones included, but he's also annoyed by general things that happen. And the fans are annoyed by things like skipping the press conference. So we better have a good March. Because if we don't, I don't really know how it goes forward.